The Light from the Inside. Conversations with active members of the Light of the World Church about the transformative power of the doctrine of Jesus Christ. Fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, sons, and daughters whose lives have been impacted and improved by the teachings of the apostolic doctrine. Welcome to The Footsteps of My Life, an ongoing series here at the Light from the Inside podcast, where our guests share personal testimonies of their past and present and how their lives have changed thanks to the message preached by the Apostle of Jesus Christ in the Light of the World Church. Welcome back to another episode of The Light from the Inside. I am Leo Fontes, and with us for this 26th episode, I have Sister Nelsy Martinez, who will be taking a look back at the footsteps of her life to share her family's experiences with the Light of the World Church and how its doctrine has had an effect on their lives. Sister Nelsy, welcome to the show, and God pay you for setting aside some time to come and share your testimony with us.
Amen, brother. God pay you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Amen. I'm glad you reached out, and I don't know how many of the episodes you've heard, but on every one I try to invite our brethren. If you got a testimony, reach out to me, and you're one of the few that have so far. Mostly it's been me tracking down those stories, but I thank you with a God pay you, and I can't wait to get started.
Me too.
But where are you from, sister? Where are you located? Where are you persevering?
So I am located in Pasadena, California, but I am currently persevering in Sur Los Angeles, so South Central.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I mentioned it before we started. I tried to snoop around in your Facebook page, but there's not one.
Yeah.
So I don't have too much prepared in advance, but this will be good. So be pretty organic.
Yes.
So why don't we just start? We'll dive right into it and share with us your testimony. I like to start from, I don't know if your family was converted or if you were born in the church. I don't know how far back that goes, but tell us your story.
So my testimony actually starts with my grandmother and my father's side of the family. She was actually born and raised in the Catholic Church, and so was my dad's side of the family. It wasn't until my dad was about 5 years old that my grandmother started actually listening to a couple of the brothers in El Salvador. She would sell them fruits and vegetables, and in the time, it was you stop by, you have a conversation, you get to know your clientele. Mm-hmm. And so my grandmother would stop some of the brothers, and she'd be like, I kind of want to hear what you have to say, because in El Salvador, Catholicism was a really big religion. Christianity was still vaguely small at the time. And so when the brothers would stop and preach to my grandmother, my aunts, who were actually nosy teenagers at the time, would just listen, and they were more curious than she was. And they actually started going before she even did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so my father, he started at 5. My grandma introduced him to the church at 5. And then he grew up in the church, and he came to LA during the Civil War in El Salvador. She brought him over here, and he spent most of his teen years here. And at 18, he baptized himself in the Church of East LA.
Okay. And
then when my dad went back to El Salvador, he went back for a couple of years just because work was a little hard to find over here. And then my grandma sent him right back. She's like, you're not staying over here. You have to make yourself in LA. You have to find some sort of work. And so he came back, and unfortunately in that time, my dad did separate himself. He fell into a lot of really bad things that the world brings to people.
Right.
But in that time, he met my mom, and they got married. They had me and my younger sister. I'm 22 and she's 18. And in those years, we were just living our lives. We didn't know anything about the church. My mom didn't know anything. She just thought it was a church that my grandmother would bring up here and there, that my aunts would bring up here and there. But we didn't really think much of it. My dad always kind of raised us with Christian values without any background to it. Mm-hmm. Always be like, oh, I don't want you guys wearing makeup because, I just don't like it. Or I don't want you guys to have boyfriends because, it's just not right. Or you have to save your first kiss for your wedding day. You have to do this, do that. There was just a bunch of rules without any explanation to them, really. And we were always kind of just like, that's kind of weird just because the way that we're living, it's not Christian based. Like my dad, he did fall into becoming an alcoholic. So we were just kind of super confused, why, what's with the hypocrisy here,
Yeah.
So we were really confused with that. Also because my dad was a DJ on weekends. So we would constantly be at parties and he'd be like, oh, I don't want you guys to drink. I don't want you guys to do that. And it was never something I was super interested in just because I saw how bad it did damage my dad. So I never really liked it. And so eventually time passed. Me and my sister, we grew up. And it wasn't until 2014, I believe, that's when Brother Samuel slept. My dad fell into this deep depression that we just didn't know what was going on. We were like, he's kind of acting weird.
Yeah.
He's not eating. Every time he gets a phone call from my grandma, he goes and hides. Normally he'll pass the phone around being like, oh, say hi to your grandma.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just fell into this sort of depression and we were super confused. We didn't know what was going on. And so my mom actually thought that he had a mistress or something because he was being super secretive about everything. And then the apostle Naason, he presented himself and then, it sort of went away for a minute. My dad was not super fine, not super great either, just because, how great could you be separated from something you love? And so it wasn't until, I want to say 2015, I think, when the apostle of God said, I believe it was on another brother that you spoke with, you asked him about it, when the apostle wanted everyone to reach out to someone who had separated themselves from the church.
Right.
It wasn't until then that a lot of people started reaching out to my dad.
Okay.
Specifically, this one sister who pretty much raised my dad in El Salvador. Her name is Elsa Hernandez. She's from South Central. She pretty much reached out to a cousin of mine who was in church, who was pretty close with us. And she said, I need to find a time to find your uncle. He's super hard to get in contact with. My dad pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth to some of the brothers. So it was really hard to find him. But my cousin, she was like, I really want my uncle back in church. So she slipped him. She gave the sister our address. And then my cousin texted my mom and she's like, hey, just so you know, there's a sister from a church who's looking for Nelson. So just be on the lookout for her. And then my mom's like, perfect. He just got home from work. There's no escaping it now. She pretty much cornered my dad. And my mom kind of sent us upstairs. She didn't really want us to hear what was going on, I guess, in a sense.
How old are you at this time, sister?
I was 15 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, of course, me being nosy, I still stuck my head out the door and I still listened to what was going on. It was kind of a blur what was happening, but I had personally never seen my dad cry before. Honestly, before us even entering church, I'd never seen my dad cry. He's a very strong person, but he's also someone who doesn't like to show weakness. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's how he used to be. Now my dad's very emotional, especially to things about church. And I get it because it's something that you hold really close to your heart. It's something that you want to keep with you, something that you can express in a way that, you can't express other things.
Yeah.
And so Sister Elsa pretty much brought my dad back to church. And when she did, me and my mom and my sister, we followed. We were like, okay, this is a little weird. How are you part of a church that we never heard of? How are we Christians? Like, I never got it because literally everyone in my family's Catholic. Everyone. Okay. So we were just like, every time we would go to their churches for like quinceañeras or baptisms or things like that, my dad's like, don't pay attention to any of this. It's not important. It's not relevant to you. And I was always like, why? Why is it not relevant? Like literally everything, no explanation. Wow. So we're confused about that. But we started going to church with him. And at the time it was Hermano Porfirio who was at South Central. And so one day my dad, he went up to him. He was like, oh, brother, just so you know, you've never seen me before, but I was born in church. I was raised in church. This is my family. And, you know, I want to make things right. I want to start going to church again. I want them to start going to church. And he's like, well, if you see, your family already knows the world. So God willing, they find their way. As far as you go, you know, salvation is on your own. So if they accept it, they accept it. If they don't, they don't. Yeah. But you know that you left. So now you have to pretty much, you know, try to bring yourself back. Yeah. And so the brother had told him, he's like, brother, I recommend coming back to church every single day. Like, it's a routine. Bring it back into your routine because that's the only way to start. And I looked at him like, every day? Are you sure? Like, this is coming from me who had never gone to church. I went to church on special occasions at most. Right. But I was like, every day? That's crazy. Like, what are you talking about?
That's so extreme.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Like, that's too much. Yeah. But yeah, we were listening, and you know, every now and then I would like feel it in my heart, like, oh my gosh, like I really love how they're preaching. I want to be a part of this, but at the same time, being raised in the world, I was like, you know what, like this isn't for me. I don't want to commit to something I probably will get out of soon. Like I made my heart really cold, brother. Like I'm going to be honest. I was really harsh with my dad and some of the brothers at some times. And I was just a teenager. I was just a kid. And I was so harsh on them. And I really wish I could. I actually did apologize to a lot of the brothers. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like I would go on Google and I'm like, questions to break Christians, like questions to answer. And I would make questions that I look back at and I'm like, why would I do that? I was all about evolution and science and this and that. Yeah.
I don't know why you always have to be judging me, because I only believe in science.
And I look back at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But we were listening for about a year. And within that year, we took a vacation to El Salvador. And that vacation was right around my birthday. And my birthday is actually on the Bienvenida. So I was born August 9th. Oh, and okay. My dad was born on the Holy Supper, August 14th.
Oh, wow.
So I had told my dad, I was like, Dad, what if for my birthday, after El Salvador, we go to GDL? You know, we go to Guadalajara. And my dad was so excited. He was like, oh my gosh, like, are you serious? Like, is this something that you really want? And I was like, yeah, you know, like, I would love to see the temple. I would love to see how the services go over there. And so we only spent a week in El Salvador and we dedicated our second week to Guadalajara. And immediately I knew that was somewhere that I wanted to be, but my heart still felt like, you know, like if the church had something to prove, like I needed to reveal to me something that, you know, or else I wouldn't believe, you know?
Yeah.
And so on the second day there, I had realized that I was going to have to leave on the 13th. So I wasn't going to make it to stay for the Holy Supper. And even then I wouldn't be able to celebrate it with the brothers just because I wasn't baptized at the time.
Right.
And so I had told myself, I was like, this is really important to my dad. And there are a lot of brothers here. And I didn't know this at the time, that that a couple ministers have like passes that they give to one or two brothers from the church so that they can get inside the temple.
Right.
So I told myself, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put in my prayers that if this is a true man of God, knowing that my dad hasn't been in the church for 30 years, I'm like, if this is a true man of God and this is truly the church that, that God sent to save his children, I want my dad to be able to get into the beautiful province. I want him to be able to get inside that church, and I want at least him to be happy. If this is for me, I want him to be able to be happy with all that. And so we leave on the 13th, and we're back home, and I had taken my senior portraits, and we were driving back home, and my mom gets a call from my dad. And he was pretty much hysterically crying. He's like, brother, at the time we were with Hermano Agustin Valle. He was like, I got in. The brother gave me a ticket to get into beautiful province. I'm going to be inside the temple. And I was like, I just started crying. I didn't know why. And I hadn't told anyone besides my sister at the time. I was like, my prayers of necessity are going to be for my dad because I want him to get in. Yeah. And so I told my mom then, I was like, my prayers, like God answered my prayers. And then I started to think, I'm like, oh my gosh, he answered my prayers. Like, I know you're never supposed to tell God like, oh, do this to prove yourself to me. But the fact that it actually happened, I was in tears, and I was so excited. I was so happy. And then I told myself, I need to get baptized. Like, I have to, I feel like, and that's when my heart started to open up. But then, you're still in the world, you're still just listening, and then you're getting pulled left and right. And so I made my heart cold again. And like, it took me a long while. Like, keep in mind, this is in August. Mm-hmm. And so during those months, I was just like battling with myself. Like, what am I going to do? Am I actually going to do it? Would I do it? Would it just be me? Would my sister go along with me? Would my mom go with me? Would it just be me and my dad? It was just a constant back and forth thinking like, what's going to happen with our family? Yeah. And then my dad, he came back from GDL, and we didn't know this at the time, but when my dad was in the temple, as the apostle of God had just finished the Holy Supper and he was leaving, my dad was like, in his head, he's like, please, please, please. I just want to know if my family's going to follow me. I need to know. I have to know. And so the apostle of God, he's walking away with his back turned, and he faces inside the temple, and my dad, he just looks directly at my dad and he just nods, yes, yes. And so my dad, he took that with him. He's like he just knelt down, he prayed, and he was like, God, please, please, may this be part of our future, And so, so then time goes on, and we have the minister, Hermano Agustin, he was telling us, he was announcing to the church, he's like, we're going to have baptisms here January 28th, right before the Holy Supper at, where was it? The Holy Supper at?
I'll tell you where it was. It was at Fairplex.
No, the Glen Helen one.
Oh, Glen Helen, okay.
It was right before that one.
That's 2018.
Yes. So we were having baptisms January 28th. And so I went on my own to tell the brother, I want to get baptized, because I knew that I couldn't wait for my mom or my sister, that I had to do it. I had to do it for myself on my own, even if it was by myself, even if it was just me and my dad. And then, little to my knowledge, my sister, she wasn't going to turn 14 in time to be baptized, but Hermano Agustin, he's a diácono, and he had pretty much asked the brothers, he's like, hey, just so you know, there's this young girl who's gonna turn 14 on August 10th, on February 10th. And she's not gonna be able to get baptized in time to participate in the Holy Supper at Glen Helen. Is there anything we can do? And so my sister was able to get baptized at 13. With a small exception, just so that she could participate in this. Yeah. And thank God that all of us on that day were able to get baptized. Me, my mom, and my sister. Me and my sister had pretty much put it in our hearts. We had told our dad, like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. My mom kind of surprised us. My mom was like, I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like I need more time. And we were really understanding. We're like, that's completely fine. We get it. And my mom actually hid a bag of clothes in our trunk. And because she was so on the fence about it. She was like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't know if I want to or not. But as we were walking down the line, I was the first one in line and my sister followed me. And then my mom followed us behind. My mom followed us, and we were so happy to see her in line with us. Just to know that we were able to get baptized on the same day and, you know, have the same experience at Glen Helen. It was just so amazing.
Yeah.
And, you know, God has brought us many blessings being inside the church. And my dad actually got one wish that he did really want is to have one of us born in church. Which was my baby sister, Lydia. She was born May 20th of 2020. She was born in church. So my dad
nice. So he got a child of liberty by birth.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very beautiful testimony, sister.
God pay you, brother.
Wow. So, man, how do I follow up with questions? There's so much shared there.
Yeah, I tend to rant a lot.
No, it's not ranting. It's just so much to share. But so after the servant of the Lord slept, going back to that time, and Sister Elsa reaches out to your father, that's when you start to see a change in him?
Yes.
With regards to drinking and everything?
Yeah, so that was right around the time of my 16th birthday. And I know that that's when I started to notice that my dad was actually going sober. It wasn't full sobriety, but it was definitely a lot less than what he used to do. And I know it was just because he fell into this really dark place, because I know that a lot of brothers did, just because not knowing what would happen in that period, if that was going to be the time where God did pick up his church, or if it was, you know, if someone else was going to, you know, be called, and especially my dad not knowing, not being inside the church, not having any of that information, he fell into this really dark place because my dad hasn't received. So he's like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know what's going to happen to my family. I pretty much put them in a bad place, me knowing that there is salvation.
Yeah.
So that's when I started to notice my dad's sobriety, because he stopped eating. He didn't sleep. So I just noticed him sort of spiraling in a way.
Yeah. If we were here every day and we had this, the big question was, what's going to happen?
Right.
You know, what happens now? Even though at the same time, we did feel there wasn't a panic like we heard of the time of Brother Aaron, you know.
Right.
But still, it was the big question. I can't imagine someone that was of the church and understood the salvation versus the opposite, you know, based on one's life and actions, to be found distant at that time, to hear that news, how it would have impacted them. And no doubt it's what you saw in your father, even though you didn't understand what was going on at the time.
Exactly.
And how about with your mother? When did you start seeing changes in her with regards to, I don't know, wanting to attend the prayers more, the prayer services, or?
So I started to notice her more when she felt hurt in a way if we were ever late to church. So my mom's a very punctual person, and we would always make it, like when we weren't part of church and we didn't want my dad going, we would make him late enough for him to not go at all.
Evil children.
Yeah, I know. Looking back at it, it's so bad. But at one point, my mom was the one who was trying to make us punctual. And I was like, I thought you didn't like it just as much as I did. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But she would wake up, like, back then, my parents wouldn't wake up till probably noon on a Sunday, you know, make it a lazy day. But at one point, she would start waking up my dad at like 7 a.m, making him coffee, making him breakfast. I'm like, are you trying to make us go to church? Like, what's going on? Like, I was really confused. And my mom's like, no, if I have to be on time to work, we have to be on time to this too. And I was just looking at her like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But that's when I started to notice the change in my mom. She was still pretty stubborn when it came to like the word of church, like especially with the skirts. Yeah. My sister and my mom were really, really stubborn with skirts. I always loved skirts growing up. I'm very feminine. I love long dresses. I love dresses, but they were just so stubborn about wearing pants. And then Brother Agustin at the time, he was like, okay, show up to church in pants. You're not a sister. Yeah. You're not a sister yet. You can show up in jeans. No one's going to look at you. No one's going to bat an eye. No one's going to say anything. And my mom would just kind of like look at him like, are you sure? But she never wore pants to church. Never.
She's probably like, what are you trying to do here? You know?
She's like, is this reverse psychology?
Yeah. Well, for any listeners that are not of our faith, everyone is welcome to show up to our temples, however they assume, as long as it's decent attire, of course. Yeah. But I could understand your mom encouraging that more for your father and trying to support him more, because I think back to the time when my family had separated from the path of the Lord. I was 13 at that time. From 13 to 18 was my time out there. And my father also, if there's one thing he struggled with a lot, was alcohol. Mm-hmm. But he was a drinker of those type that the next morning he would not remember anything what happened the night before, mm-hmm. during that intoxication. So if there was, if besides the drinking, there was other behavior that offended and hurt, he wouldn't even remember, mm-hmm. Even if it was just the drinking alone, in your mom's case, I could see her embracing that change that she began to see in your father, to the point where she wanted to encourage it more and support it more, because I can't imagine how much peace that was bringing for herself.
Yeah.
As the mother of the family, trying to hold it all together with a alcoholic husband and father.
Yeah. It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because my dad would also black out for weekends at a time. He never considered it a problem, because Monday through Friday he wouldn't drink. But on weekends, he would kind of get carried away to the point where he wouldn't remember things. And, my mom would always be like, let's test him. Let's just keep our distance. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. Even some of my aunts were like, your dad doesn't hit you, so you guys should be fine. Like, the alcoholism shouldn't be your problem. And I was like, seeing your parent in an incoherent state of mind when you're a child, it makes you kind of mature fast. And one of my uncles actually brought that up. He's actually from church. He actually converted through my dad when they were kids. And he told me, he's like, I know that you had to grow up pretty fast because of how your dad was when you were growing up. But just know that he's a better person now. Because at one point I didn't want to believe that my dad was sober, just because I felt like it was too good to be true.
Yeah.
Part of me didn't want to believe it. And my mom was actually really grateful that he became sober. But at some points she would even want to, they would kind of bump heads about it. She'd be like, she was grateful that he was sober, but at the same time, she didn't really enjoy the fact that he was going to church because of, I don't want to say how strict, but how tight my dad held on to his beliefs.
Yeah. Because
he was, at one point they were arguing, and my mom said, would you leave us? Would you leave your family for this church? And my dad said, unfortunately, if I had to, I would. Yeah. If I had to, I would. And that kind of brought my mom to a realization that, this was something that my dad truly loved.
Yeah.
And, we weren't going to stop him. Like, he didn't want to go to the point where he would have to leave again. And that was something that was really hard for us to accept, especially not being from church and not being at a point where we were like, this is something that we want.
How many years have you been in the church, sister, now?
I have been in church got baptized in 2018, 19, 20, 2022, 4 years.
4 years. Okay. Does that make sense to you now, though?
Yes.
What your father was telling your mother?
Yeah.
How do you feel if it came down to you versus your family? Would you say the same words as your father? Or, I mean, obviously it would be hard.
Yeah.
Because we love them.
Yeah. I feel like I probably would. I've gained a family from being in church, so I wouldn't mind. I mean, I would mind losing my material family. There are a lot of family members that we have had to say goodbye to since joining the church. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate. You know, I didn't think it would come to that simply based off faith. Yeah. But it did. And so it does hurt to not talk to people that you used to talk to. But, you know, you gain so many more amazing people here. And I am so grateful. Like Sister Elsa is like a grandmother figure to me. And then there's so many brothers and sisters who hold such dear places in my heart that, you know, it would hurt materially, but spiritually, I'm still gaining so many more family members.
Yeah. And to clarify also for the listeners, it's not so much that we're saying if upon converting to the Light of the World Church, we have to cut off our family that do not. We have to sever all ties with them. It's not the case. The issue is, for example, how healthy would the friendship, or not the friendship, the family gatherings be for your father who was once drinking with them and is now trying to live a life that's totally separate from that? It obviously it would clash with all of his renewed desires to live a life that's pleasing to God. So, and I mention that because, you know, that's one of the things that sometimes is thrown at the church, you know, that they cut off all ties with all their family. And it's not the case. It's, you know, if I lived the life, I'm 54 now. If my conversion to the church was just recent with my family, I would not want my teens hanging around the teens that they might have been, you know, in a time prior to this, because I'm going to try and steer them now to a life and a mindset, you know, of changing what the doctrine does to us. It changes us to want to live a life that's just pleasing to God.
Right.
So,
yeah, my dad always makes that example that some of our family members preferred when he was a drunk than when he was sober. And it's so interesting to see that people would prefer that than someone who's clean and doing well for themselves. Yeah.
They would prefer to see the family problems and the family like falling apart, and the youth without the closeness with their parents because everyone's going in different ways, than to see a close family unity.
Yeah.
That we become when we embrace the doctrine that exists in the Light of the World Church, preached by the Apostle of the Lord, our brother Naason, Joaquin, Garcia, that changes all of our lives when we embrace it, you know. But yeah, it's sad to see that, but it does happen. And I don't know if you heard, I believe it might be episode 5 where I interviewed Sister Mary Cortez. And examples like hers, she was, I believe, 14 when she converted, and her family was all Catholic. And it could have been any religion for that matter.
Yeah.
It's not an attack on the Catholics. It's just a different belief now. Right. She converts to the Light of the World Church, and her parents basically tell her, you need to choose between your brothers and sisters now or your family.
Right.
And she said, well, I choose my brothers and sisters because the Lord had done a beautiful work in her heart. It wasn't a work of man. It wasn't someone that, you know, had convinced her and pushed her. What was done in her heart was true. It was from God. And I don't know how old she is now. She's of age, and she's never left the church. She's still there in Nampa, Idaho, persevering. I was going to ask you, is your grandmother still with us? Is she still alive, or is she?
Yes. Actually, my grandma is still persevering. Right now, she's confined to a wheelchair, but brothers go visit her all the time. And then whenever she can, she gets a ride to church. She lives in a small little town in El Salvador. It's called, what's it called? I know that my dad used to live in La Union, but now, San Martin, that's where my grandma lives now.
Okay.
And the church isn't that far away. I want to say like it's a good 5-minute drive from her house. But since she is confined to a wheelchair, it is harder for her. But brothers go visit her all the time. She joins in through Zoom. So she's still super strong and persevering.
That's awesome. Praise God. When's the last time you've been to El Salvador?
I actually went last year in May, and we're going to go again this year in May. We're stuck to going for short increments of time. So I went once when I was 12, then I went again when I was 17, and then I went again when I was 21. And so we don't want to keep doing that. We want to go a little bit more consistently.
Okay.
Yeah.
How close to that place where you go to in El Salvador is where the Light of the World City is being built?
Oh, it's probably, I want to say like a good 20-minute drive. I know it's right next to the airport.
Oh, wow.
It's literally like you drive 5 minutes from the airport. It's right there. My aunt already bought her property.
Yeah.
She's pretty ready for her house to be built there.
How's it going? Have you seen it?
I have seen it. We actually met a couple of the brothers because they have a small restaurant right on the highway. Okay. And pretty much any funds that restaurant makes, they put towards building that city.
Wow.
They're already doing the layout. They're pretty much laying out everything in bricks for like miles and miles on end. Wow. There's a little forest at the very end that has a playground entrance. Brothers are making ways there. It's so beautiful.
Wow, that's got to be so beautiful. I mean, to visualize it. The servant guy's already seen it completed. Yeah. I believe the meetings he's probably had with the everyone involved with the construction of it. Mm-hmm. He's helped them to kind of visualize it, and by faith, obviously we see its completion, but to actually arrive to that day and see the temple there, the buildings and everything, it's got to be beautiful once that, who of us will be here in that time. But, so 4 years in the church. Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of why, I don't really have a social media standing. My parents told me until I'm 18.
Until you're 18?
Until I turned 18. So from 18 till now, it's only been those 4 years. So
okay.
I don't have a ton up there. I do, however, have one picture up there from when I was a bandadera at the Fairplex Holy Supper.
I was going to ask you about that. Mm-hmm. Bandadera. So that's how would you say that in English? A flag girl?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were representing, is it the country of Nicaragua?
Yes, I was Nicaragua that 1 year. And then for the most recent Holy Supper, I was Paraguay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I saw on your Instagram, you had a picture there with 3 other sisters. Mm-hmm. I know one of them's from Palm Springs. I forget her name. Do you know where the others were from?
One of the other ones was from South Central with me. And then another sister, I don't recall where she was from. My mom kind of just squeezed us in a group picture together.
That's cool. How about is she your younger sister? Was she involved in anything like that?
No, just because at the time, brothers were pretty strict on the age requirements for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one thing I did learn about visiting your Instagram page is not to go there with an empty stomach, like I did today.
Yeah. My family's very food orientated, especially in El Salvador, because my dad actually really loves to visit little spots that brothers have.
Oh, that's cool.
wherever there's a church, my dad knows that there's food there.
Yeah.
So like those brothers know how to eat, where to eat, and when to eat.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of delicious looking food there. Made me hungry. So how much family in El Salvador do you have in the church, sister?
So my dad has 7 sisters, and from those 7, 5 are from the church.
Oh, okay.
And then honestly, there's a lot of family that I had just recently met when I joined the church. Like they are family that I never knew I had until we joined the church. Like I have family in La Unión who's been part of the church since it started there, because originally it was just in San Salvador, and then it kind of just spread out just because San Salvador is a major city. And so La Unión is far, far towards the border of El Salvador and Guatemala. Mm-hmm. And so when it got there, me and my dad, we were just driving by one day and we stopped by the temple, and then this young girl comes out, and then my dad's like, "Oh, that's your cousin." And I'm like, "What do you mean that's my cousin?" And they're like, "Yeah, if you drive further down, you have like aunts, uncles that live down there." And I'm like, "How much family do we have?" He's like, "Well, unfortunately, when I left, like, you know, we lost contact with a lot of my family, like a lot of my extended family. And I had met cousins I never knew before, aunts I never knew before." Wow. My dad has a very large portion of the family that's from church.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
They must have been very happy to hear of his return.
Yeah, everyone was so happy. I feel like the person who was the most happy was my grandmother, just because, you know, being in the position where one of your children is outside of church, it's really hard to deal with. Yeah. And I know that now just because when I first started going to church, I realized how many jóvenes there were. There were a ton of youth. Like there was a lot. There was a lot who were missionaries, who were part of the battalion. And now I look at it, and a lot of them have separated from the church. And seeing how their parents cry whenever the brother mentions, you know, loved ones being outside of church, I never want to inflict that on my father, knowing that that's how my grandmother felt. Like I'm not in a parental position, so I don't know that sort of love yet. Yeah. But I don't want my dad to ever have to go through that, having a child outside of church, because it must. I mean, I'm sure it hurts.
It's very painful.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary because there's a young man that comes to my mind who was born in the church and grew up in the church to perhaps his early teens, and he got into gangs and a lot of, you know, bad things early on. And it's scary to think how far your child could fall in that distancing away. You know, I can think of another one that his life pretty much ended in prison. You know, he took the life of one, tried to take the life of another, and his life ended in prison after being there for some time. And again, that's now, not everyone that leaves the church falls to those extremes. For some people, things go very well for them, as I've said in previous podcasts. But again, those are the things that the doctrine saves us from. You know, that lifestyle, that falling, and so when matter of fact, there was a sister who commented on one of I forgot if it was on one of the videos of the episodes or if she just sent me a message directly, but she thanked me for kind of putting the spotlight, you know, taking it away from the son, the prodigal son, and kind of putting it on the parent, the father. Let's pause on looking at the pain of the son, the child who had everything and lost everything and wasted it and came back and was blessed. And let's look for a minute at the parent, the pain that the parent went through, you know. And it's painful, it's scary. I still have my oldest sister and my youngest brother, that since my parents' separation, my family separation, they have not desired to, to come back. And it's scary.
Yeah.
If you remember the mass shooting there in Las Vegas not too long ago, they were there on that, where everyone was dancing, in that outdoor gathering and party, whatnot.
Right.
And I remember they came back scared because they heard the bullets flying by them, and they saw the people dropping, and blood everywhere. But still, it has not been enough to scare them enough, to want to get close to God. And I don't know what it is. I can't, they're in my prayers every day. And all of our brothers and sisters, you've probably noticed that in every episode, I invite the guests, if you could say something to those that are out there and maybe listening, what would you say to them, to try to encourage them to come back? Yeah. Because I've been there. I have family that's still out there, like many of us do. But yeah, our prayers go out for them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sister, so how many years was your dad out?
Oof, my dad was out from when he was 20 until he was about 50. So about 30 years. Yeah. In those 30 years, he met my mom. They got married. They had 2 kids. They settled down. And then, boom, out of nowhere, we're in church. For him, it was 20 years. For me, it was just my first 17 years of life.
Yeah. But again, it must make sense now why your father raised you and your sister in the manner that he did.
Yeah.
And I would guess even your mother, not raise her, but, desire perhaps a certain style of living from her and you all as well.
Yeah.
And now it must make all the sense in the world.
Yeah, it really does, because, we were raised with all these. I always thought my parents were just really strict. I was like, okay, my dad's just super strict. That's fine. I remember when my mom got me and my sister to get our ears pierced. I was about 6 years old at the time. So my sister was 2. We just came home and, we were at the mall and my mom's like, I'm going to get the girls' ears pierced. It's a traditional thing that girls do. It's fine. Yeah. When my father saw our ears pierced, he went into this state that I had never really seen my dad so upset with my mom for. He was like, "What did you do? This is abuse. Why would you do that? I'm going to get the kids taken away from you. This is it. Like, this is my point." And my mom was really confused. Like, "What are you talking about? It's just an ear piercing. Everyone does it." And he's like, "No, it's because this isn't how God would have wanted it." And then my mom was just like, "What do you know about God?" Just back and forth. Yeah. And so little things like that, like throughout my childhood, they were just Christian things without like any explanation behind them. So I know that I really like skirts. And so whenever I would see a long skirt, I'm like, let me put it on just like to make my dad happy. I remember one time when he had gone to GDL by himself, we were waiting for him at the airport and we all had long skirts on and he was just really happy. He was like, wow. "Oh my gosh, you guys all look so beautiful. I love it. Like the modesty." And we're like, yeah, material things make him happy. But it was like, it's a material thing, but in a sense, it made him happy spiritually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just thought my parents were super strict. I was like, why are you guys being so strict? Well, I guess it was just to protect us. And, in a way to kind of make it an easier transition into what we are in now. So I know that like the lifestyle I was brought in was something completely different than what I'm in now, but I've never really liked it. I probably think it's from seeing my dad kind of overdo it. So like overdo the parties, overdo the drinking. Yeah. I honestly never wanted that for myself. I knew that I had told myself that I had gotten to a point where it was really bad, where I told myself, I'm going to save up enough money to get me and my sister out of here by the time I turn 18. Like I had opened up a savings account when I was 11 years old, and all the money that I had, like from birthdays, Christmas, just random money that I got, I would put it into that savings account. Wow. By the time I turned 18, I would just get my sister out of here because it was just a really unhealthy environment. Mainly just because, my parents, they would get into these altercations, or it was just my dad made us feel really unsafe. It was just things like that I was ready to leave.
Yeah. And that's, sometimes I feel like I lose track of my goal with this project, but I do want to emphasize that during the time, I mean, for you it was all new and normal, quote unquote, in your house growing up in that environment. But for your father, who had been raised in the church and left the church, again, that's again, it may sound repetitive, but that's the impact that the doctrine that exists in the Light of the World Church has on us, and it saves us from all that. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And that's why I think when we understand that it's not just a person's stubbornness and this is how I want you to dress, this is how I want you to be because I want it. Yeah. It goes much more deeper than that. And it's because there's a teaching, a doctrinal teaching that we can find and prove with the scriptures that exists, that it is the desire of the Lord that the sisters dress a certain way, even the men dress a certain way. And in that lifestyle of even in those material things, like you mentioned, when we please the Lord and fulfilling with his teachings, then his blessings just rain upon the family. Yeah. So I wanted to mention too, how, when you're telling me that about your father, how you guys couldn't understand it. It makes me think of going back to the very first and second episode with Brother Isaias Martinez, when he says he was small, him and his twin brother, and his father sat them down at a very young age and told them about tattoos, and explained to them that our body, according to what we find in the scriptures, is like the temple of the Spirit of the Lord. So it's something that the Lord wants us to take care of, which enters the tattoos, the piercing, the alcohol, and everything that could harm this body. The Lord teaches us to take care of it, to honor it, to respect it, to cherish it. And your father, having had that teaching deep within, even though he wasn't sharing it with none of you, undoubtedly that was the reason, which you now understand, that your father also was pushing that and requesting that of his wife and daughters.
Because it was also small things, like my dad, whenever he was beyond his like points of sobriety, whenever he was like super intoxicated, he would tell me, can you do me a favor? Can you read Psalms 91? And I was like, why? I was like, what? And apparently it was a psalm that my grandmother would always read to him whenever he felt scared, or whenever something was going on. She would just read that one to him. So he would ask me to read it. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler, and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler.
You shall not be afraid of the terror by the night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in the darkness, nor the destruction that lays waste on noonday. 1,000 may fall at your right side, and 10,000 at your right side, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked, because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling, for he shall give his angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him, and show him my salvation. May this psalm may have been for the honor and the glory.
Because we only had one Bible in the house at the time. It was just like this. I don't even know where that Bible came from, to be honest. I feel like it was just something that we had.
Yeah.
But he always tell me to read Psalm 91 to him. And then he would always remind us to pray at night. And I was like, I don't know why. Like, I guess like it was just something that we did. I know that I prayed. I didn't know how to pray at the time.
Yeah.
But, I would pray. I would pray for things like my father being better, in a better place. And, you know, God listens to his children.
Yeah. How about your mother? Would she also pray?
No, honestly, my mom was raised as a Christian. She was raised in the church, what's it called? Lalim. It's a church in El Salvador. It's a Christian-based church. It's pretty much where they sing and clap and use instruments. Okay. My mom was raised in that. Okay. And so when she moved here to California, my grandmother took her to a church, but it was never anything that really stuck. Yeah. Like what my mom said, it for her, it was, you can just play the part because it's just memorization. Mm-hmm. Like all the prayers, the things that you say back, it's just memorizing them.
Yeah.
So my mom, she never really wanted to push that on us. So she just kind of like parted her ways with religious stuff, and she never really talked about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's all beautiful, sister. I mean, wow. There's a brother I'm thinking of in Victorville, California. He was born and raised in Guadalajara, and he left the church when he was very young too, and very similar story to yours. Met his wife outside of the church, got married, and was out there for quite some time. And they had, I think she had, she might have had about 4 kids by then, now going into their teens. Mm-hmm. And I guess she would keep telling him to, she felt the need for them to go to church, right? Mm-hmm. And she was Catholic, mm-hmm. born and raised Catholic. And she would tell him, we need to take the kids to church, you know, and him having the background like your father in mm-hmm. the church, and being distant, it wouldn't happen. So she finally told him, either you take us and our kids to your church, or I'm going to take them to the Catholic church. Mm. And that's when he started reaching out for brothers to go visit him, you know. Yes, it was beautiful. Not long after, because he had never been baptized. So he was baptized. His wife got baptized. I believe his son and daughter got baptized. The wife received right away, you know. So beautiful how the Lord works.
Yeah.
When did you first learn of the podcast, sister? I'm just curious.
It was pretty recent. I know that I was having a conversation with one of the brothers from youth. We were all talking about what we listened to, and majority of my job, I do it while I work in retail. So a majority of my position is done before the store even opens. So I spend a lot of time in just silence. And I listen to podcasts. I've always thought it was an interesting thing.
Okay.
And so they started bringing up podcasts that are church-based. And I know my dad likes to listen to LLDM radio on his way to work. So I was like, well, what if there's an English version of that? And then I just typed LLDM on Apple Podcasts, and then I came across your page, and I was like,
awesome.
I love this. I need this. This is exactly what I need when, I need to do my consecrations, and when I shouldn't be listening to other things. Like, this is perfect. And then I started hearing the testimonies, and it kind of compelled me. I was like, I really want to share my testimony. I really want to share mine.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks to God you found it. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from it. And they told me how much these conversations help them, and so many like that I've been hearing. So it's been very rewarding. I do like to always say it's not something I'm doing on my own. There's a small team that's helping me and supporting me with the project. Well, sister, God pay you for sharing your testimony. It's very beautiful. Makes me want to go have some pupusas now. My wife and I, that's our favorite when we go to Guadalajara to look for those pupusa stands. Something different from the tacos, but
if you're ever in South Central on Saturday, we always have the ventas for pupusas.
Yeah? Oh, man. I mentioned it before. I used to help when I was in the finance team. I used to help with the tamale sales and festivals. And if there's a taco stand next to us, they do pretty good. But if there's a pupusa stand, man, that's where all the people would be lined up, trying to get the pupusa. Well, sister, I guess this is where we'll wrap. I do have a few quotes and stanzas here I'd like to do. Sister Marisha Cortez from Nampa, Idaho, has put these together for me. I have a bunch more here. I have to print out. Well, print it out. I have to cut and include to the stack. But I'm going to pull one. Just read it and just tell me what you think. It's either going to be a quote from the Apostle of the Lord or a stanza from a hymn, and just see how it fits with your life. So I have a hymn, number 265. First stanza. Wonderful love that rescued me from death and sin, guilty and vile as I could be, hopeless within. When every day of light had fled, when every ray of light had fled, O glorious day, raising my soul out from the dead, love found a way. What do you think about that stanza?
I feel like that one actually hits pretty close to home for me. Just because, I always tell my dad this, that there were so many situations in that time period that we were out. My sister, she was born premature. So my dad named her Sarah after the woman in the Bible. And then I know that my mom had a lot of complications with my sister's pregnancy. My mom also had, very aggressive migraines. My mom had 3 dislocated discs on her spinal cord. My father had been hospitalized a couple times. God always brought us, life always brought us really close to the end. And, I always tell my dad, I'm like, God saved us for something, for something great, being part of the church. And I will always be grateful for that, just because there are so many points that, I could have turned around. My mom could have turned around. Any of us could have turned around. But, we were made for this. And I really need to stop telling myself when I'm at my lowest that this wasn't for me. I really need to stop doing that. But, God brought us here for a reason, He didn't bring us here to condemn us. He didn't bring us here to show us who's going to leave, who's going to stay. It's none of that. It's literally, we all are here for the same end goal. Yeah. We're all here for eternal life and salvation.
Yeah, we're all called and brought for salvation.
Exactly.
To be offered the opportunity.
Yes.
It's what we do with that offer that makes the difference. You know, as it says, many are called, but few are chosen. But that choosing and selecting, sometimes we think, well, maybe I'm not one of the chosen. But no, that's not what it is. We were all chosen in the fact that the Lord had mercy on us and brought us to include us. But now it depends on what I'm going to do with that here forward, you know.
Right.
So yeah, God help us all, because no one is exempt. Whether we're members sitting on the pews and persevering, or the ministers in the labor that are helping the man of God, none of us are exempt from what the enemy can do to us if we allow him to.
Right.
You know, but God help us all. The man of God said that this year is going to be a year of many great blessings. And I believe we are already feeling that and seeing that, enjoying that in our hearts. Even in the midst of all the affliction, the hardships that we have just on a regular day-to-day basis.
Right.
But we're seeing how the Lord is with us, and we're prospering and triumphing. We're seeing the church growing. You said your father has not received yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet?
Mm-hmm.
My father took a long time too, a lot of years. But again, the man of God said this is the year of great blessings. So this could be his year.
Yeah. And I just really hope that because I do have a lot of the brothers who have left the church on social media, like a lot of the youth that I just don't see anymore. Yeah. And I really hope that they listen to this, because I kind of want to link it on my Instagram. Yeah. And I really hope that they see this, just because I spent my teenage years in the world, and, you know, it's not the greatest thing. It's not the best. It's not this fantasy that everyone makes it out to be, like, oh yeah, I left and I tried a bunch of things that I couldn't try in church. The thing is that you can try that. God gave us free will for a reason, but, you know, we're raised with these morals. We know right from wrong. And I don't want anyone spending their teen years or young adulthood in the world. It's not a place of love. It's not a place that will accept you. It's something that that could tear you down and could really hurt you. And it's, you know, I want them to be somewhere safe. They're my brothers in Christ, and I would much rather see them at a youth service again than, you know, see them out there living a life that they think is ideal.
Yeah, it's that curiosity too, that when you're born and raised in the church, there's always the curiosity of what that tastes like, feels like, you know, the experience. And yeah, I go back to what the servant of the Lord said. You know, he knows where they're at and what they're battling with. Matter of fact, he said, you may remember, that the age of the youth is one of the most difficult ages that we go through as human beings, you know, especially in the church where we're striving to live a life that's pleasing to God. It's very difficult for the youth trying to find themselves, you know, and whatnot. But you covered the question I was going to ask, you know, words to say to those who are distant. But I mean, there's no better way we can say it. So God pay you for that. One thing I wanted to ask you about, sister, was your mother.
Mm-hmm.
She works in the medical field?
She does.
I saw that she was also dressed in that attire for one of the Holy Suppers.
Yeah, so my mom actually had to work throughout the entire pandemic. And so one of the Holy Suppers was during the pandemic. We were all stuck inside. And my mom at the time, she worked at a psych ward. And so it's a place where, you know, people have to be there for a good portion of the day. And so unfortunately, my mom was scheduled to work. But, you know, she was connected through Zoom. And I honestly really admire my mom. She was working in a place that it's the harshest of conditions, with very difficult people who aren't in the right state of mind. But, you know, she always took her hymn, she always took her Bible, and she would connect herself to as many services as she could.
Did she have to live there, sister?
No. She would be there from 11 a.m. till 3 a.m. on occasion. So my mom was pretty much on call. She would work Monday through Friday, or if not, Monday through Thursday. But we would barely see her. Honestly, especially during the pandemic, my mom tried to distance herself as much as possible, just because, you know, it was an insane time. Yeah, it was. And she didn't want to risk any of us getting sick, any of us getting, you know, COVID, just because over there, it was just one person after another with a cluster of people. But thank God my mom never got it. Yeah. So exposed to it, and the Lord saved her from it. What's your memory of the YouTube prayers during that time? Honestly, my memory is we were at every single prayer from the 5, like literally it was at 4:45 before the 5 a.m. would even start. I would walk down the steps and see who would be in the living room. And like, I would see my dad there. And so I'd sit next to my dad, and then my sister would come down, and then, you know, my mom would come down, and, you know, it was such a beautiful time seeing us so united with the church. My dad even made an altar for, and then when we would do the 8 a.m. prayers for the servant of God, we would take turns taking it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Remember the Holy Supper during that time? Yeah, I do. It was my baby sister's first Holy Supper.
Hence, from this moment, our consecration will be perfect. We will not feel alone, gathering in our houses instead of the temple. We will not feel sad thinking, this time we did not go to Guadalajara. This time, brethren did not come to stay in my house, because after this letter is read, which I will be hearing over the phone, I will go on my knees in this place. From my bonds, I will take your faith in my hands as gold that went through the crucible, emerge once again pure, brilliant, and beautiful. And I will present it before God to say to him, once one of your prophets asked you to open the eyes of his servant, because the servant was afraid of the army that besieged them to apprehend the prophet. And seeing his servant stricken with fear, scared and separate and desperate, the prophet did not want his servant to remain in that human condition. So he prayed, my God, open his eyes, that he may see the glorious power. And God opened his eyes. He saw the thousands upon thousands of angels by the mountains, by the hills, by the valleys. And then the man felt peace of mind, because he realized that God was with them. 2nd of Kings, chapter 6, verse 16 and verse 7. So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I prayed, open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. As this letter is read, now many hearts and minds will be thinking, I am alone here with my wife and children. 8 or 10 people may gather in some homes. 4 might gather in another home. Perhaps two will meet in other homes, or maybe just one. Satan will try to deceive you and say, "What a sad Holy Supper. Everyone is alone in their home. But I will entreat my God. I will supplicate my Lord Jesus Christ that He may open the eyes of each of His children who have prepared, of each of His children who have consecrated. And they shall jump for joy. They will speak in tongues. They shall see thousands upon thousands of angels descending from heaven." You shall see them enter your home. They will enter your brother's house. Your eyes have never seen a more beautiful display, such as the one you shall witness. When those heavenly beings descend from heaven, you will know that this celebration will be as beautiful as all the others.
It was honestly so beautiful. I never felt so close to my family at a time, because normally for Holy Supper, we're pretty separated, just because men are on one side, women are on another side. You're in the front, sisters with kids are at the back. We're kind of separated. But it was such a beautiful feeling to see each other's faces, during that, like seeing, like we all felt that true connection, I feel that connection with the brothers that I have next to me, but, seeing my dad rejoice, seeing my mother rejoice, and, we're all in this beautiful harmony. It's such a beautiful thing to have in this household, just because in this house, we went through so much, like that living room used to be a party space, and now it's somewhere where we worship God. It was just such a beautiful feeling.
Are seasons like this wearing you down? Is the pandemic and social discord causing you stress and misery? How would you like to escape to a safe and peaceful place, a place where your heart will feel at ease? What if I told you you can do that, and from the comfort and safety of your home? Well, with the Light of the World Church, you can. Not only during this trying and stressful time, but even after it is all over. My name is Garcia, and I invite you to tune into any of our 3 daily prayer and worship services for the spiritual benefit and consolation of your soul.
The Holy Supper is soon to come. We're a few days away.
Visit us at any of the links below, where you will find Bible study videos for kids, in addition to our services in English, Spanish, French, and Italian.
For that month to begin, a month of blessing, a month of jubilee in the nation of our Lord.
Give your ears a break from all the heartbreaking news and join us as we unite daily in over 60 countries around the world to worship the Lord and remember His word.
Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which translated, my God, my
Mas
God.
nesse povo há apóstolo de nosso Deus. Nele há autoridade.
Y estoy seguro que tú allá en tu casa también lo estás, hermanos, diciendo, en nuestra casa va a haber Santa Cena.
We're going through a pandemic. We're going through a difficult situation at this moment. But the Church of the Lord, we're seeing triumphs and victories. We are seeing power. We are seeing growth. We are seeing the manifestations of God. All this due to the love and the care of His holy apostle.
May God bless you and reward you for hearing this message.
Yeah, so below us, we had what the Son of the Lord says, the palm, the hollow of the hand of the hand of the Lord, where we're standing, basically. Above us, he's mentioned how we've been covered by that mantle, So it was a time of we felt so protected and so sheltered, Meanwhile, outside of our homes and on the news, everywhere we went, there was just almost like panic, and of everything, because that was an enemy that no one could see,
right?
And I remember feeling like this is kind of what it must have felt like a little bit, the people of Israel when that angel of death was going around, and taking the firstborn, the life of every firstborn.
Right.
But the ones who were sheltered in their home, listening to the word of God and the instruction that was given to them and obeying it, they were safe. They were protected from it all,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we got to enjoy during that time. It was very beautiful. Yeah. Anything else to add before we sign off, sister?
I just wanted to, hopefully they hear this, but I just wanted to give a big God pay you to all the brothers who assisted me and my family in our transition into the church. There were so many brothers who were the most understanding people, especially how difficult I was. And my mother, we were very stubborn. So I just want to say a huge God pay you to Hermano Agustin Valle and his family. They're off in New York right now. A huge God pay you to Hermano Porfirio for giving, that hand to my dad as the minister he walked in with. And then Hermana Elsa and her family. She has 10 kids, and each one of those kids came to my house and preached to me, even though I would roll my eyes to the back of my head. I am so grateful for them. They must have been like, oh my gosh, she's really cold. But, if it wasn't for their pushes, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And then a huge God pay you to, the minister that I have right now, his kids, Hermano Joab Osorno, his children, Sharon and Joab, literally people who keep pushing me every day, just because I know that I still have habits of falling back, being not falling back into old habits, but old feelings that I have, feeling helpless, feeling I don't have control over things, like anxiety, things like that. They always remind me, take a breath. God will help guide you through these things. So I just want to say a huge God pay you to, every family from my church who truly helped us in our path.
Yeah. Do your parents speak any English or all Spanish?
My mom speaks really fluent English. She came to us at 11, and then my dad's a little broken English, better in Spanish, but he can get his way around in English.
Cool. Maybe you can convince her to hear it, see what she thinks. Well, this is great, sister. Well, nothing else to share then. Up to this point, I want to say God bless you and prosper you in the path of the Lord. You have a long ways to go.
I do.
As the apostle of the Lord just told us in this most recent letter, this beautiful long letter that we received from him on Sunday, all we have to do is just put and keep our trust in the Lord. Amen. No matter how hard things get, as they will continue to. But with our trust in God, everything, he will iron it out for us and we'll be triumphant. So again, may the Lord bless you and prosper you in his path. And may God pay you again for allowing me to capture your testimony and share it with the entire world.
God pay you for having me, brother. I was really excited.
Amen. I'm so glad you were able to, sister. Come on. Well, we invite you to visit us online at the Light of the World Church's official website at TLOTW.org. And we also invite you to visit us at any Light of the World Church temple and place of worship that is closest to you, presided daily at 5 a.m., 9 a.m., and 6:30, or 7, depending on where you're at. And from Monday through Saturday, and on Sundays at 5 a.m., 10 a.m., and at either 5 or 6 p.m., again, depending on the location. For any Light of the World Church members that are tuning in, I want to invite you to contact me like Sister Nelsy did. If you have a testimony to share regarding how the Light of the World Church, its doctrine as preached to us by the Apostle Lord, my brother Naasón Joaquín Garcia, has impacted your life, changed your life, because these are the stories we want to get out there and share with the world. Who I wanted to ask you, sister, in all of your hard heart and rebellious, with all the ones that were trying to talk to you that you were just thanking, in any of that period, at any time, did you ever feel forced?
No.
To do
never.
anything against your will, to convert, to believe anything?
No.
In any way?
At first, it was pretty hard with my dad. He was like, oh, we have to go to church with skirts and this and that. And I was like, okay, we'll go to church. It was fine. Like, I would do things to kind of stop us from going to church. Like, I would kind of slow the process down, making us late. Like, I don't like the skirt I'm wearing. Let me go change. Things like that. But I never felt forced. Honestly, I feel like my dad was always, he was persistent. He was like, come on, let's go, please. Like, and then, sometimes he'd give up. He'd be like, you know what? It's fine. Stay at home. Other times he'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you for coming. Like, I'm so grateful that you came. But I never felt forced in any of the instances.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's because, like you said earlier, it's all free will.
It is.
We're given the opportunity. We're shown the two paths that the Bible marks.
Mm-hmm.
One has one outcome, and the other has another outcome. And then the choice is up to us. So, yeah, for any listeners that are not currently of our faith and are tuning in because you're trying to get to know a little bit more about the Light of the World Church and what life is really like, you're listening again to two members that are current and active members in the Light of the World Church, giving testimony of what life is truly like living in the Light of the World Church. We don't have enough words to explain or to express the joy, the happiness, the peace, the assurance that we go to bed at night, knowing that even though things like myself, the job I have, I was about 2 years without work. A very stressful time for me. And nothing changed for me until I put all my trust in the Lord. The minute I did, not a week later passed, and the Lord blessed me with this job. Mm-hmm. I've been there for 12 years, and I've been recently informed that the end of this month will be our last day because they're reducing size and moving to Texas. But I've already learned that even though I could perceive that as a hardship and fall into an anxiety, and the house and the cars and the, everything, yeah. I've already learned that if I just put my trust in God, then I have nothing to worry about.
Amen.
And that's the joy and that's the peace that we enjoy here in the Light of the World Church. It's a true peace, mm-hmm. not like the world offers, like Sister Nelsy's father experienced when he was distant. It's a false peace. It's a false happiness. It's a false joy. In mm-hmm. the Light of the World Church, every single day we are living and enjoying a true peace. And it's what we invite you to come and discover. Just come to get to know us a little better. That's our invitation. May God bless you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. God bless you, sister.
God bless you, brother.
Well, this is where I cut it. I'm looking at you and I can't see why they call you Freckles. I don't see any freckles on you.
Oh, I know the camera doesn't catch them.
My older sister, she has a lot of freckles on her face, and
yeah.
I don't want to say I tease her about that, but I just remember that from childhood. A lot of freckles, but yeah.
I got them from my dad. My dad has them all over.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, on my face.
Well, you're probably proud of that then.
I am.
How old is your little sister now? You're the youngest.
My baby sister, she's going to be 2 years old in May.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it was a true pleasure, sister. I'm so happy you reached out to me. I knew you had a good story to tell because you were anxious to connect.
I was. It's the second that you reached out to me, I ran to my mom. I'm like, Mom, the brother came to me. And the house, and I was like, Mom, come back to me. You're so happy for me.
Well, I've said it, in other podcasts. I really enjoy when the brothers give testimonies in church, and I'm getting my nerves up because I want to give one this month with the help of the Lord. But it's something I really enjoy when the brothers and sisters give testimony, whether they're there on a microphone, part of the service, or it's someone presiding the service, they just fill us with a lot of joy, There's a lot of testimonies we can read in the scripture or from previous eras, but we rejoice so much in those that we are living in now in our time, and especially if it's with our family, and we reflect back how much the Lord has worked in our families.
Yeah.
You mentioned about your father, how he's more open to crying now.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful to cry, to have that liberty to cry.
Yeah.
It's so comforting. But we can go on forever.
And, my testimony is ever so growing now because, every now and then I'll strike a conversation with my dad and he'll tell me like another story of when he was from church. And I'm just like, why didn't I know this about you before?
Yeah. I'm still trying to put together a long documentary type testimonial of my family's conversion going back to my grandfather's time. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things that I learned during that research, man, how come I didn't hear about this before, and there's so much. And you put it all together, you look at the big picture and you just like, wow, look how the Lord worked to get me to where I am today.
Exactly. Like I always look at my dad and I think about like, how was it possible that you left? Just because my dad was in a position, because in East LA, the house of the servant of God is right across the street.
Right.
And so whenever Brother Samuel would go, my dad was one of the youth that the minister would be like, Nelson, I need you to be there, his right hand, do whatever you need, whatever he needs. And my dad would be like, yes, I got it. My dad was almost courted to a minister's daughter. Like my dad was in such a good place.
Wow.
He was like, and it just goes to show you could be in the best place possible and the enemy can come at any second.
Yeah. I need to stop because we can keep going for a long time, but I better stop. No, I was just thinking, that probably is another reason why your father felt that so hard when the servant Lord slept.
Yeah.
Thinking of those blessings that he had, the closeness that he had. But thanks to God, he's back with all of his family. I'm trying to get to, I have this brother that helps me, and he's like, brother, you got to stop cutting them off. You got to let them talk, And so I'm trying to do that more, because when I think of something, I got to say it or I'll forget because I can't write fast enough. So I'm looking here, oh man, you said so much. I'm like, because there's so many beautiful points, but gosh, there's just so much. But yeah. Happy to be here and to facilitate this. And again, I say it's all thanks to the Apostle of the Lord, because he's been the one always inviting us to just share our testimony. So God pay you for doing that, sister.
Right. God pay you and God bless.
Amen, sister. God pay you, God bless. To all our listeners, may the Lord reward you and bless you for tuning in. The goal of these conversations is to allow you to hear firsthand, directly from faithful members of the Light of the World Church, how its doctrine has changed us through personal and spiritual, life-changing experiences and triumphs. God bless you all for hearing.